welcome everybody to our panel discussion, Orchestrating the Future MES and DCS Demarcation Strategies for Biopharma Drug Substance Manufacturing. I want to welcome my panel here. So, Katerina Karpianus from MSD, welcome. Gustavo Martin from Lonza. We've got Martin Petrick from Rockwell. Also, MousavizadehSenior from Siemens, and our Peter Westdorp from Accenture. So today we'll explore the boundaries between MES or manufacturing execution systems and decentralized control systems and the evolving strategies in drug substance manufacturing. We'll discuss the spectrum of MES-driven to DCS-driven, loosely to tightly coupled, and also the framing conditions related to compliance, speed, flexibility, as well as also, what shapes these decisions, right? And our panel here brings together a lot of expertise from leaders in the pharma manufacturing automation, as well as also the experience they bring with relation to real-world strategies and experience they can share here. Lessons learned, future outlooks. I think, Stefan, it's a good segue to also what you just presented, a good use case that can also be kept in mind for our discussion here. And we'll also look into what cybersecurity, which is becoming more and more relevant to our day-to-day operations, also brings us implications towards our, how we shape this landscape, as well as also new regulations. So to kick off, I would like to ask each of my panelists to, in 30 to 45 seconds, just quickly share with us what are the single most critical factors when defining the MES and DCS boundary that shapes their decisions. Is it speed? Is it compliance? Is it flexibility? A combination? So, Katerina, over to you. Would you like to take a first stab at it?
Yeah. So for us, as we are a pharma manufacturer, MSD, we always need to concentrate most about compliance, but sometimes to achieve the compliance, speed is critical. So in processes where, for example, where load cell values are constantly changing and every single value is important to the process, then automation systems are a better choice. But in processes where single value from an equipment is required or important to the process, then we keep it in MES. And our rule to decide whether MES or DCS should own it is quite simple. Whichever system can handle fully the functionality owns it. And we always keep in mind that we want to avoid any unnecessary interface layer if possible.
Mm-hmm. Gustavo, how does Lonza?
Well, I think it is complicated to pick only one of the items you said, mm-hmm. But I would say compliance, and I would connect the compliance with the business continuity as well, the robustness, reliability, mm-hmm. And of course there are the secondary factors like simplicity or things like that, or reduce maintenance effort. But I would say business continuity and compliance.
Okay. The vendor side, Amit?
Yeah, obviously I like the combination,
right.
As you mentioned, because it's difficult to choose only one. While compliance is a must-have core in Siemens Pharma solution, but at the same time, the speed and flexibility is equally critical for biopharma and bringing the medicine fast to the market. Mm. And also, it's aligned with our Siemens key values when we call it like technology with purpose. We really aim to bring medicine faster to the market to enhance the life quality of the patient. And for that, Siemens provide for native integration between the DCS system to precise control, and also MES to intelligently orchestrate the complex recipe in the pharma and also data quality. And this will help the biopharma companies to empower innovation rapidly and also safely to bring the advanced therapy like personalized or cell and gene therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for me there is again not a easy decision in terms of compliance, speed or flexibility. I think the key thing when it comes to DCS or MES is that you've got to look at basically how do you get this thing validated and how do you keep it validated for the life cycle of basically the combination of the systems working together. And I think the art or the thing that we need to work on is how to do that fast and get the cost of basically getting these worlds. Automation and MES will always be separate worlds, but how do we get the cost and the time it takes to get them integrated and to basically get them validated, these interfaces validated, and keep them alive for the duration of the systems down. That's the challenge. So for me, the compliance, of course, the validation of the interface is what matters, but it still takes far too long and costs far too much to get to validated state, and to retain that is also expensive.
Okay, good. So let's then look closer into what boundaries, ownership and orchestration are related to, for instance, at Lonza. How does Lonza define the core responsibilities of MES and DCS in drug substance manufacturing, and where do you draw the line, and why? Sorry.
So very generally speaking, I would say DCS should drive the process, so it's more connected with automation. So MES is more for documentation, compliance, guiding the operator. At least in Lonza we have some processes, demarcation or systems demarcation, a paper, and then we define exactly what should be to which piece. It is true that for many aspects it's totally clear what should go to the MES part, what should go to the DCS layer, but there are some topics where we have our discussions, no? For instance, hygienic status, control of the equipment, for instance, signatures. Some signatures can go to the DCS layer, some others to the MES system. So in general, I would say 80% of the topics are quite clear. And for 20% there is a controversy. In general, what we are really chasing for is business continuity, robustness in the process, and as of today we consider that the DCS system is much more reliable than the MES system, which is software-based.
Interesting. Okay. And Katerina, how do you assure alignment across IT, automation and QA when defining ownership for the recipe management, batch records, and specifically the exception handling?
So we have global teams who owns the recipe management, and another team that are closer to the business who owns the batch reports as they are tied to the manufacturing process. Our automation is rather maintaining the software, hardware, making sure it's compliant, reliable, well integrated. And for the quality, for the exception handling, is fully owned by our quality department and quality representatives who are accountable for the decisions, and they gather input from the respective teams.
Okay. Martin, how do you guide clients if it comes to setting that boundary, and also, what are the best practices that you've seen?
So I would say that when it comes to what to do in MES and what to do in automation layer, there is no one-size-fits-all answer to that at all. We tend to have to deal with what's there already often. Yeah? So I think there are several contingencies that determine what you do. A big factor is it a brownfield or a greenfield scenario? If it's a greenfield scenario, you can, by design, have a lot more degrees of freedom in terms of actually making decisions. If it's brownfield, there's a lot of stuff there already, and you are not going to be, as a part of a general MES project, rip and replace or fundamentally restructure what is there. So basically brownfield, greenfield. The other thing that I think matters is when does the MES discussion actually happen in the design of the facility. Very sadly, often it happens quite late. And if it happens quite late, then a lot of things are given already, so you have to deal with what's there already again. Yeah? I think the automation approach that is followed is also, the philosophy of automation matters a lot. And there are different strategies to be followed in terms of what is in automation, how intelligent is it, varying from automation being a full S88 batch engine with a lot of capabilities and recipes that exist and are created there and maintained there, to simpler IIoT related integration approaches where basically you're dealing more with capabilities on equipment that might be able to batch or be parameterized to some extent, but it's fundamentally different in terms of where it is. You've got to deal with the options. There are advantages and disadvantages to all of these approaches. And I think what matters a lot is when it comes to the DCS-MES interface, there's a lot of data that matters. Building management systems, environmental monitoring stuff, alarms and events. Normally there's a lot of automation from many vendors in a production facility. It's not uniform at all in most cases. Yeah? So how do you deal with all of that? In terms of, and we saw basically Takeda say that they've implemented the SAIL project that tries to like normalize the interface. So that's an approach that at least gets the two sides somewhat decoupled. I think that's a good thing. For me, advice to customers would be think strategically. You know, what I think would matter a lot when you get to have a discussion as to what do you do in MES, what do you do in DCS. Think strategically, think long term. What are you actually trying to long term achieve? And I think in the long term, the things that most are chasing have to do with time to value. So how fast can I actually get a new product introduced and manufactured? Total cost of ownership, I think, matters a lot. And then in that also, what does it take to update, upgrade, and keep that whole thing secure? Think long term. I think that long-term strategy will guide decisions that get taken. The second thing I would always advise is try to follow standards. You know, when you get into a diverse situation where you've got to connect different types of automation from different vendors with a different pedigree on it, if you have to do each one of them as an individual, one size, very special integration problem, that gets ultimately expensive. Yeah? So I think following standards and then trying to stick to them and make sure that your interface contract that you negotiate, because you will see that there are MES components and there'll be an MES vendor, there'll be automation, there could be many vendors of automation and equipment. Get that interface contract negotiated and keep it stable. Make sure that it's done very well. Because if you can standardize on that, you can achieve the decoupling. I think that's what Takeda talked about. And you can keep that alive for a long time. And then the other thing I would recommend is if you can, templatize and standardize wherever, and parameterize wherever you can. If you can work with templates for equipment, templates for recipes in automation and in DCS, and you can parameterize these and manage parameters in a structured form and the passing thereof, then you've got something that actually would be lowest footprint and probably easiest to keep alive and maintain over time. So templatize, parameterize, and try to do that over the entire manufacturing fleet. And if your fleet is more than one company, which is very normal, by the way, you know, like if you could do that over the partner network, that would be perfect. I know that these are very challenging things that I've talked about, but that would be sort of my advice. And as I said, I have not come across there being one size fits all that works anyway. So if we could get better at standardizing, templatizing, and parameterizing, and could do that as a community, I think we would all win a lot, because we would drive cost down and we'd get time to value down. And I think they matter more than anything else.
Can I ask a question on that, Martin? Because I heard you talking about long-term strategy and standards. So architecture, thinking in architectures is important as a first remark maybe. But how do you see then the impact of MTP and the process orchestration layer coming up in this discussion?
So MTP has been basically a NAMO-driven attempt, basically has described equipment. It's a sort of an equipment-centric capability thing. I was actually part of the NAMO MTP standardization body for a few years, been very close to that. It's very near to my heart in terms of what it does. However, in my opinion, what it addressed was too low level. We do not want to necessarily, as an MES, interface with the equipment at the level of the capabilities of the equipment. Ideally, you'd have more intelligent equipment that you can interface a layer higher, yeah? In terms of the whole thing. But the vision of plug and produce, the ability to get equipment to be able to tell you what its interface looks like, discover interfaces, and basically know that once they've discovered, they get configured and they work, and you do not need to test anything because it just works out of the box. That's very valuable if it can be done.
But
I've
that's
seen
MTP.
it work. I've seen MTP work when the orchestration level is basically a batch engine. That is sort of the level at which it's implemented and fairly mature in terms of doable. I have not seen it work at the MES level, but it could, if we could just get our act together in terms of like lifting that standard.
Okay.
But the approach is exactly the right thing we should be doing.
One comment on that. Actually, I see MTP a bit like loose coupling, because you have predefined parameter, you have predefined process with the MTP. That's like a production unit. You connect, when you connect to MES, you can have some standard communication, and I can see it a bit like loose control because it brings you more flexibility. You have some predefined, you know the control strategy of the equipment module that you have, and it helps you. You can just do the copy with a different recipe. And I see that I can see that MTP can help also you use as a loose coupling.
What are considerations you see with respect to loose and tight coupling you come across your projects typically?
For us, actually, it's a strategic decision. And often we do it with our consulting partner like Accenture and the others, that we need to understand the customer criticality, data ownership, and flexibility. Because we always want to avoid unnecessary interfaces, unnecessary data exchange, because you have the load, you have the complexity in the project, which is really unnecessary, which is really important for the controlling, and which is really important for the drug quality. It should be transferred to the MES level to have your electronic batch record. It's really important to define the business needs from the customer. And usually we use tight coupling when you want to ensure seamless critical operation, and also you have this compliance with exchanging many data real time. But if you have more, like if you need more flexibility and evolving process, we prefer loose coupling, which we use standard industrial standards that help us to have to exchange just the needed data, not the whole data. You can keep the raw data in some OT level, but it's not necessary to transfer many data to the IT level. And for us also, for Siemens, we use some kind of smart hybrid coupling, which we use for our product, the native integration which we have between our MES product Accenture and also with our DCS system, MES-7. We have some kind, we call it recipe-driven execution, which help both. We have the both. When it's necessary, you can have more event and communicate to each other. When it's not necessary, you can have just like electronic signature or something between two systems. And it helped us more efficient and more optimal revalidation for biopharma manufacturers.
Good, so that's also then basically getting to compliance, how you assure GMP compliance, EU Annex 11, as well as 21 CFR Part 11 compliance with respect to the data handoff, or how do you assure traceability there?
Actually, I know that the traceability and data integrity is very crucial in regulatory compliance. And just back to the previous question, if we have two strategies, if we want to do it with the Siemens native product, when we use this recipe-driven execution, which we have all this audit trail, we have e-records, we have e-signature in the level of communication with both systems, and we just keep it like a seamless clear with the compliance. If we want to use Accenture, integrating with other DCS systems, we leverage standard protocol like OPC-UA or BatchML or etc. other protocol which we have, use this protocol to have the auditable the auditable data records in the both system. It's necessary. And for us, that's the approach that we just do for this. And also like important to tell that beyond the product feature, it's also important. The compliance is an important factor in the project level, and that needs that experience. And Siemens, in that field, Siemens uses his extensive experience in the numerous pharmaceutical project and also support the partner how we can just apply the compliance in the to meet the requirements of the customer.
So Hamad, a question maybe on what you said. So if you talk about native integration, it's mainly you recommend Siemens integration, Siemens Opcenter to DCS-7, or is it also Opcenter to another DCS?
Opcenter is absolutely flexible. We are not to tell that you have to use this Siemens Automate or Siemens DCS system. But if you would have the DCS, Siemens DCS, sometimes it happens also. Some customers come to us because they already have some automation level, which is Siemens product, and for them is for the cost perspective, but also for complexity, more valuable to use the same product which they have a native integration. But Opcenter we have different protocols, we have different standards, we are very flexible communicating with all other DCS systems. It's no limitation that if you have Siemens Opcenter, you should have PES-driven. There is a lot of advantage, but you can also do it on also other part. If you have Siemens PES-driven, you can use any other MES which you want.
Katerina, getting back to the manufacturing side of things, how are alarms, exceptions communicated and resolved across MES and DCS, and is there a clear auditable protocol and ownership model?
So when an alarm happens in our DCS layer, then due to the safety and GMP regulations, we always have to respond and acknowledge them in DCS in real time. MES is rather a record-keeping system, and we only pull the data in via qualified batch report systems like RT reports or info batch at the time of a batch completion. So then they become part of the batch reports and are managed there further.
Okay. And with Lonza, what happens when a batch phase ends? Who triggers the next step, and what happens when that handle fails, for example? And what's your fallback and rollback actions?
So we don't have a standardized approach of doing the things because we have in Lonza different MES systems, different DCS systems. The integration method is also different libraries, different languages. So to be honest, we don't have an harmonized way of doing the things. But recently with Pharma Suite, we decided for this DCS-driven approach. Basically, the DCS system is controlling the recipe, and then the way to go is that MES is triggering the start of the order in the DCS system, and then from this moment the DCS is controlling the process, is taking ownership of the process until the end. You are asking me how many communication touch points exist between both systems. It also depends on the master data, because one SAP order can represent one MES order or one batch, or one SAP order can represent multiple MES orders in the MES layer. So you can have multiple touch points, because every time one batch phase ends, maybe you have to start a new order, and this requires a new trigger from the MES system. So, but basically the approach is that MES is pushing down everything that is necessary for running the batch on the DCS system, and then DCS is controlling all the rest. And then MES is like a listener, basically waiting for events.
Okay. So sticking to Pharma Suite, which system initiates the execution phases and which controls it? What informed this decision, and how do you verify and validate this?
So I would say, first of all, there is not a one approach that is implemented. This is basically something that can be done project specific. In general, what we do, I mean, Gustavo mentioned that it depends on how you structure it. So you'd start with an order. An order could have multiple MES batches, and every MES batch could lead to multiple DCS batches that could run in parallel. So in principle, there is a hierarchical relationship of things that happen here, and I think it is sort of top-down in terms of orchestrating what happens. From the ERP that does the planning and scheduling to the MES that does the orchestration of all of the production over all of the different lines and batch servers that might be there. And then the DCS that would obviously be doing the detail execution work. We model the MES recipes like you would do batch recipes. So there's an S88 structure with the procedures unit, procedures, operations and phases can lead to starting a batch and then basically monitoring the batch, doing handshaking between the two. So sync points are very common, but it is sort of like you start something in the DCS, you hand over what it needs to be able to do that, you let it do its execution, and you react to events. Normally the MES gets active on execution if they are manual operator driven things that are related to material or maintenance activities or replacement activities that need to happen. In general, we in the DCS, in the MES recipes have got, as I said, phases that can start a batch, that can record production and consumption and exceptions. We try very hard not to get all the events and alarms and so on that could come from a DCS and record all of them. We try to do what Takeda talked about, is basically collect back what is important in an EBR, and that is basically the exceptions and the material related events, and anything that you need to in the compliance record actually record that you actually checked against limits and so on. Yeah? So that is basically it. And I think what is important is, as one does all of this, is you need clear standard-based interfaces. I think messaging with payloads is the way to go as one moves into the future in terms of the handshaking between the systems. And yes, there is a need to sync things. Yeah? When in the middle of an execution, material needs to be moved, and actually something needs to move them automatically that might be automated. If it is, then these are sync points that you need to know. It has now happened successfully, and you need to be able to do the handshaking very finely on these sync points. And I think the other thing that I would also say here is you do need to always keep in mind what kind of performance and timing can you have on interfaces. If it needs to happen fast, automate it. Move it away from the DCS if you can. Or from the MES if you can. DCSs can do things in sub-second resolution. MES systems shouldn't need to. And if you want to run MES systems in the cloud or further and further away from your plant, then that gets even more important.
Okay. Now we've spoken a lot about compliance now. So cybersecurity has changed a lot recently in terms of how we operate and also how we have to update and safeguard our operations. So maybe a question to Katerina and Gustavo here. How are you adapting lifecycle management to meet NIS 2 obligations, as well as keeping your MES and DCS interfaces validated? Katerina, you want to take a first stab at it?
Yeah, well, in general, the cybersecurity is embedded in our framework, and every time before adapting any new technology, we have a risk-based impact assessment, evaluate the impact to the functionalities or business, and the same when before implementing any changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on my end, I'm really doubting if these cybersecurity requirements are really impacting our life cycle and the maintenance of the applications, to be honest, because so at the end, in production, in operation, we have a pretty packed production planning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like one window per year, or maybe every 2 years, we have one window for updating the systems. So we have to really use the opportunity and run all the migrations you have in mind and in the planning. So I think who is really triggering those updates is more operations rather than the cybersecurity requirements.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, cybersecurity, everything security related had to be implemented. The question is how and when. And to be honest, I believe that the most of the times can be implemented without impacting on the manufacturing systems. It's more impacting infrastructure. Probably you had to do some IQ, repeat the IQ, and do some risk assessment, and the interfaces are not really impacted. And probably you don't have to revalidate anything on the MES and DCS side. So,
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and do you have a different strategy for MES than for DCS? Or is it all in the same scope?
It also depends on the integration between systems. You know, and we have a variety of different integration methods as well in Lonza. So we have really tight integrated recipes between MES and DCS. So in those cases, when you touch one part, you have to touch the other one. So there is not a way around that. When there is a separation, a clear separation between systems, you can somehow maintain independently both layers. You know, so it really depends.
And I think it also depends on if your MES is in the OT layer or maybe on IT side, and then is there a DMZ in between?
Okay. And Ahmed and Martin, how do your products support the Cyber Resilience Act? And also, how do you manage the expectations that make this usable for a GXP environment?
Yeah, so I'll say a few words about basically the regulatory frameworks. Basically, as a vendor of automation and MES, you have no option but to comply with the Cyber Resiliency Act, or else very shortly you won't be able to sell anything, at least in the EU. So this is a must-do activity. We've been taking this very seriously for quite a while, and we have achieved an IEC 62443 Secure Development Lifecycle certification. We are certified by TÜV at maturity level 4, so that's improving, means that it's all in place and happening. So we monitor cybersecurity and cybersecurity risk and sort of exposure all the time, and have to basically improve the situation release by release. And if there's anything found that is vulnerable, we have to fix it straight away. Yeah? Now, what we're doing there is very close to the Cyber Resiliency Act regulations. They're still a little bit in flux in terms of the details, so we will need to monitor that as this law, the legal framework basically solidifies there. But basically, we're doing what it takes to be able to keep that alive. But what is important, and this is, I think, where security is a huge challenge. Security is a journey, never a destination. So, when you look at the whole situation, it constantly evolves. You think you fixed everything and resolved everything. The next day, someone has found some new attack surface. So, and the learning from that is basically this approach, and I think I hear that a little bit from what Gustavo says. I build these systems and I don't touch them because I don't have an opportunity. I think that's going to be very challenging to keep on doing that, because I think the regulators are going to be looking at how you're hardening constantly what you're doing for manufacturing. Because if you ever got attacked, then basically there could be a major problem. Yeah? So I think the challenge, and this is a challenge for us as a vendor and for manufacturers, is we've got to get used to touching running systems all the time. And we need to get to being able to do that in a way that doesn't break the validated state, and that actually is possible without stopping production, and so on. And that is a journey. We're not there yet. But I think that is sort of like a corner where a lot of creativity and like innovation money needs to go to basically make sure that we get closer to upgrades that self-test and actually take you from version to version to version in small steps that have limited impact, but in a way that you can just keep on doing it whenever there's something new, without it impacting manufacturing.
Yeah, just to say that of course the security patches, normally the supplier is including the security patches in the coming version. Yeah? So version that is not running in production. So because in production you have the version X, you are including the security patches in the version Y. So basically, I agree that we had to work really in common, but I would expect from the supplier that is providing a clear migration path, so we can really to have the system up to date with all the security patches, downtime really close to zero. And this is a common effort, you know. And sometimes this is not really possible because you see that the version in front can be implemented on site in the coming years, so it's 1 year from now. Because you don't have the space, you don't have the window for doing it, you don't have the resources, it's too risky, the production planning, etc., etc. So you have to introduce a lot of different workarounds to still be secure on the plan, you know, without implementing this target version, which includes all the security patches.
But Gustavo, the problem here is it's actually more complicated than that, because we've talked about DCS, MES interfaces. What if there are multiple DCSs from multiple vendors and MESs from several vendors, and we want to keep our production running, and we've got interfaces to a lot of other things, and I think we will need to get better at that. And and what makes it complicated is that there are things that are now intercoupled, and the interfaces need to keep running. And the only thing that I can at the moment think of that we need to do is we need to work on good interface contracts, and we got to make sure that they are very stable, that they can keep running. And whatever happens as we cyber harden and can actually touch the different systems and bring the fixes and patches and upgrades to them, that the interfaces are not broken in the process, that you can do this in little independent pieces without the risk being, oh, everything needs to now be updated and retested, because I don't think that'll ever be doable.
Maybe a scenario with an integration layer is that's decoupling this dependency.
Yeah,
might be a good solution.
Needs good interface technologies, and that allow you to decouple, while at the same time making sure that it's secure. And especially if you've got old things out there, watch this, because old interfaces are not secure. And you probably will need to touch them.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing in a pharmaceutical project. It's not a fixed product. You have many customer, there are many things based on the customer demands that change or develop during the time. When you do the update, sometimes it's a bit like you can do many things before, but there is some black box in front of you. Something happened maybe in the past, there was some engineering that they had another purpose, but you don't predict that. And then you face something that during the migration that, the ideal is like it goes without any problem, but that's the nature of this complexity in the pharma. That we need to have more standard, maybe in the future is better, but it's always a challenge. The migration, the updates, it's always a challenge.
Katerina, getting back to you, how does MSD manage that validation, requalification burden of constant updates? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so updates and patching in general, we do the patching every month on our lower systems like sandbox or even validation systems. And when it comes to the productions, we always have a detailed planning, and we always want to couple all the changes at once and do it together with the patching. When we do only patching, we don't typically need to revalidate fully because the DCS and MES interface is we keep it in limited cases and it's proven stable. So we only qualify when a change to functionality or has an impact to regulatory has a regulatory impact. Only then we qualify.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and maybe just, I mean, we've touched on it, but maybe just to drill a bit deeper. How do you guarantee interface stability and compatibility across versions to reduce that revalidation friction?
We understand that the revalidation is a key concept. It's also like important things for the project because it's very costly. And also Siemens try to guarantee the stability and also compatibility between the versions by prioritizing reliability and consistency. And that's how we do it, we have two methods. First, we just try to work as much as possible with open standard, open industry standards, and the other we try to do a comprehensive testing. And Siemens leveraging and also actively contribute to open industry standards like Profinet, OPC-UA, ISA 88, MPP. We just try to contribute to more standard to understand the current needs in order how we can just have the new version of product which is compatible with the current needs and the standards of the market. And next to that, we have also comprehensive testing in the Siemens side. When we have some very new version of something, we try to do the extensive testing by simulating the real-world biopharma process and do the test on it. And also, first of all, we approve our version or our change. And the second, we try to provide predefined test protocol documentation for our customer in order to help them to be faster by new version. But at the end, we try to have this backward compatibility in order that we have not big change that push the customer to have like big effort with touching many systems.
Any specific
I would again just say that basically have a good solid interface contract and don't break it. That would be my advice. I think that this is always going to be a problem scenario because there is no product solution to this that any vendor could provide, because the interfaces, especially if they are multi-vendor, they cross different supplier boundaries. And everyone who is a provider basically can only test against the interface contract his side of that interface. Yeah? And I mean, it would be good if basically you could make sure that your supplier on his side of things has got automated test protocols that allow you retesting things after an update to be sure that nothing broke. But I would say don't break interface contracts. That would be sort of my key thing. And I think that there will always be limits to how far that can be something that a vendor in a product can solve.
Okay. In the opening statement, we heard a lot of voices related to speed, scalability, and so on. So let's maybe touch on that a bit. So Katerina, how scalable is your current MES-DCS strategy for personalized medicine and your multi-product facilities?
So our current MES-DCS strategy is deployed in the majority of the sites. We have a global team who owns the interface and also manages the deployments at the site. So in this way, we ensure the consistency and adherence to the standards. When it comes to the MES, we have a similar model that a global team is owning all the recipes, MBRs, and our life cycle framework. And our MBRs are always process-based and highly parameterized, and we do have same MBRs used across different sites for manufacturing different products and at the different locations. It brings us faster, closer to the tech transfer and all the things you mentioned.
Okay. And Gustavo, maybe to you, what challenges do you face if the MES-DCS roles differ in terms of tech transfers within those sites?
Well, so it is really difficult on our end because, as I said before, so different MES systems, different DCS systems, recipe design strategy is a bit heterogeneous. Also, the libraries are different. Different languages even. So you could leverage, when you do a tech transfer, you could leverage parts of the recipe, but it's not really reusable because at the end the strategy on the local side is totally different and it's managed by local teams, so you are really breaking the local strategy designing recipe. So all in all, we have a big trouble, because I don't want to say that we have to start from scratch, but almost, and this is something that we want to change right now with a new strategy. but it's really difficult. Also, additionally, we don't have any PLM system nowadays, so basically all the BOP, the parameters is maintained in each MES system, also in different files, Excel, downloaded directly into the system, so you don't have a central place for managing the parameters, so this is making even more difficult the tech transfer. Yeah, it's really complicated. You know? It's based on really experience and speed up based on experience, but there is a lot of manual work.
So you need the right people in the right place, yeah. Okay. Hamid and Martin, how are you preparing for cloud-based MES, specifically modular production units and AI-driven orchestration, and what does that mean for that boundary we're discussing?
Shall I go first? Yeah, I think what's important here is basically cloud-based MES is a reality. We in Rockwell we actually have a cloud-only multi-tenant public cloud MES for discrete manufacturing called Plex. So we've got experience at doing cloud-only MES manufacturing. When it comes to pharma manufacturing, I am not convinced that cloud-only is really so desirable. And the reason I think that one needs to look at like more a hybrid approach is that there are business continuity and performance disadvantages of cloud-based execution. Yeah? And there is in the regulated industries definitely a need, in my opinion, for private cloud. The data, the persistence, also your recipes are your IP. This is very sensitive information. You do not readily share this, and you want to make very sure that the risk of leakage is definitely zero. Yeah? So I think that needs to be looked at, but there are lots of opportunities to adopt cloud technologies to basically reshape what MES is, and we are doing that. So we are in our Pharma Suite MES on a journey where we're separating execution, the design space and the persistence space, such that there are private cloud options for design and for persistence, and that there are options for execution, so you could choose to run it in cloud or on premise. I think that is going to be desirable in many cases, because you simply can guarantee I can manufacture a number of batches. If the biggest disaster imaginable happens on a Friday evening and someone takes out the fiber optic cable and something, and the support guy is on holiday, and you know you can produce for a few days. Yeah? And I think that is that is in this context, because of the value of what you're doing, very important. But there are challenges to classical MES. If you look at what we've always done, and you go to personalized medicine, you know, when the factory that you're looking at or the line that you're looking at fits on your desk, obviously you cannot afford the infrastructure and the cost, and the automation level of that thing won't be done in a DCS, because you simply cannot afford putting a DCS on something that smaller footprint. Yeah? So I think there are things that are going to change. They're going to affect what we do in these corners. Definitely personalized medicines is a challenge to MES systems, in the sense that to get any quantity of product made, you're going to have to run orders of magnitude more batches in parallel and manage all of the EBRs that are now patient specific. It's a different game. Yeah? So we will need to basically deal with that. The biggest challenge, I think, for MES is dealing with tiny. Yeah? Huge we can do. Tiny is the challenge. And actually doing tiny and making money on it as well is, and I think that's for pharma manufacturers as well as anyone who supplies into that, the big challenges. Where is the commercial justification for spending the money to do this? At the moment, it's a big bet on the future with very insecure returns. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's where this is going to go. The other thing I want to just mention, I think there's a lot of opportunity here as we modularize, as we standardize, as we begin separating specifically design and persistence, to then begin doing AI-related things that get the effort out of the design work, take some of the effort and the standardizing out of learning from what we've actually produced, and closing those loops. There's lots of IT opportunity using AI to basically close loops and find those very valuable needles in the haystack. Yeah? So I see a lot of opportunity in the separation of concerns and centralizing more. And then we talked about core programs rolling out. I think, Katerina, you mentioned that you've got a standard and you roll out to the whole factory. The problem is what happens after rollout. These site systems evolve. And how to get that to the improvements made there back to the core, such that the core evolves and actually improves rather than these systems branching into their life. There is hope in the sense that when we start centralizing and increasing the visibility over the fleet and applying tools to these things, being able to close loops becomes more and more possible. And I think that's stuff we need to work together on. And there's a huge opportunity, I think, also for the community to start talking about standardization and best practices and actually sharing some of the cost of going there.
Yeah. No, agree, and I think, also some advertisement for our World Cafe session tomorrow, Ahmed, where we spend some time on MES Lite solutions, see what is evolving there, right? Vimacam will be there, Tulip will be there, Apprentice will be there, yourself as well, and we'll have, I think, very interesting discussions around that fit-for-purpose MES Lite solution that is more and more, also being asked towards us, right? What do we see happening there? What is the right way of approaching it? But maybe, now I've jumped the gun, maybe just to complement what Martin said, what progress do you see on Siemens side related to cloud-based solutions?
Actually, we're actively trying to shape the future of pharma manufacturing. And cloud is one of them. What we do now, cloud is one of them. We try to evolving our ops center to the cloud-based MES. But next to that, we are doing also enabling seamless recipe transformation from drug discovery to the commercial production. This is also something that we are trying to pace the pharma production. But also next to that, MTP is also important for us, how we can have more standard production unit from also different equipment provider. When you have more standard, you can have this plug and produce flexibility. And also it needs a lot of cooperation between the vendors and also between the equipment provider, but it's also important because it brings a lot of flexibility. And next to that, the hot topic in the market, AI, it brings a lot of, advantage to the daily business, to the daily work that we do. And we also use our AI solution to enhance our predictive insights, to do our efficiency, and also to do some automated function like creating the EBR. Or we can do it based on the AI. You just give the manufacturing protocol what you have, and also based on that, try to make you the electronic batch record on the system. And all this together, for us, is also try to change this traditional way of DCS MES communication, and we try to bring it to the fluid data-centric exchange between these two systems, to have a seamless IT-OT integration and data exchange. Because if you have the cloud, it's also very important how you connect your OT level to the cloud and how you can have the real-time data, how you can exchange the data. There's a lot of challenges that we are working on it.
And that brings us back to the loosely coupled or tightly integrated scenarios. Is there a recommendation? Is loosely coupled maybe better?
For me, for biopharma, I would say if it's possible, loose coupling, I prefer, because daily you have more equipment that they are more modern, they can do many things standalone. You don't need this control recipe to bring in the automation level, to have a lot of effort to do everything with a central system. If you have an MES system that just trigger some equipment and just ask for the data that is necessary, you can have some protocol to keep raw data or whatever data in the automation level. If it's necessary, look at that, but you can have some IT solution that is validated, that It just gives you the guarantee for the auditing that, okay, I keep all the data. If there's exception, if there's an alarm, my system detects it, then it will be erased. If there is no, I'm sure that all is controlled by the system. We keep the raw data. If necessary, you can check it. Therefore, I would go more for the loose coupling. If it's possible, I still need to, there is some for some pharma manufacturer, you cannot. You should go for the tight for some reason, economic, but loose is my preference.
Good. So I think we're also getting to the end, right? So maybe last 5 minutes. Maybe let's do the round here. If you had the choice and if you could influence it, what would your choice of change be? You would like to make to industry norms, if you had the ability to. Gustavo, you want to start?
Yeah. So I would like to see a more native integration between the MES system and the DCS system, even between different suppliers. And also when we talk about the systems demarcation and the processes demarcation and where is going what, so I would like to see much more ownership from the suppliers, mainly the suppliers delivering MES system and DCS system, just offering and proposing
standardized interfaces,
interfaces, standards, processes which should be covered in this side, processes for this side, so responsibilities, core responsibilities, so more proposal coming from the suppliers.
Okay, good. Katerina?
Yeah, exactly. Same for us. We would like to move away from the proprietary interfaces and rather use the standard protocols for more vendor independence and easier support, and most importantly to the wider range of adapters that can be connected with the same communication.
Great. So instructions to my left here.
So I'll go first again. You know, when you asked the question originally, you said which change would you want to see to industry norms in the next 12 months? And I said, oh no, industry norms and 12 months. That seems to be like incredibly short.
No, I left the 12 months away now.
And I find that very frustrating.
Yeah.
So I want to dream a little bit, and I want to pick up the cyber topic again.
Yeah.
Cyber stuff is for me very interesting because cyber security and the regulations, NIS2 and the CRA, are the result of the regulator stepping in because of market failure. You know, cybersecurity, everyone's talked about it, and then when you look at what shall we do, you sit there and what's he doing? What's he doing? Let's wait for someone else to move first before I do anything. Yeah? That's basically behavior vendors have had, and I think customers basically are doing the same thing. It's expensive to do something. So there's market failure there and the regulators step in. I would so wish that the regulators would step in on this norming of interfaces and getting industry norms on DCS or automation and MES interfacing and actually force it. And if I could, I would work with the people who are doing these cyber regulations and say, well, you know, interfaces between things actually matter a lot. They are going to not work. And then all of the cyber hardening stuff that you're asking us to spend money on all the time basically also is meaningless, because whenever you do something, the whole system now breaks. Yeah? So I would love to see basically this standardization stuff become something that the regulators start paying interest to and then forcing. Because I can't see how between vendors and customers alone we'll get this hurdle of standardizing done. It would be very good if we did, but I've been at this too long to believe it will happen out of the strength of suppliers and customers alone. I think it needs regulation, and I would want to actually push in that direction, get them interested.
So additional regulation. Okay.
If it helps us actually get it done, because it's technically been possible for a long time.
Okay, good. How about any wish from your side? What norms would you like to see changing apart from the standardization of interfaces?
I support him if we can just do some sort of, I'm not against it at all, if any person start that. For me is for me, it's very important to establish intelligent and context-aware information exchange or data exchange as a default, because we need more meaningful context-rich information system which understand to eliminate custom engineering, which also Gustavo said in other words, maybe native integration or something that when the system understands each other. For me, it's a critical point in the integration is the two systems is not the data flow, it's understanding the function of the others. And that makes it very difficult because the system don't understand their function. They can speak they can change the data, but the data goes in the same table or in the same function that is needed because you want to have this value at the end. And that's my wish that if we could have this kind, it's a lot of effort in the engineering or also to have the vision at the beginning of the project because it's really important to have the vision. Sometimes we don't have the real vision in the beginning of or call it as a concept or vision together because we are just thinking that we need to save money later during the project. We don't need to spend a lot of money before starting the project, but it's also important to have before starting to have to do consultancy, to understand, to do workshop, to understand your needs, to bring your to have a collaboration inside the manufacturer, and then you understand your needs. Then you talk with the vendor. Then you have a lot of because you also then you can lead the vendor because sometimes the manufacturer they think that okay it's a complex thing. The vendors should lead them, but the best way is when the client lead the vendor. I say this is what they need. You need to go to that direction. Then you have the better result from the project. And next to that, what Siemens also do that, we are doing some also we call also digital trade solution that we try to close the gap between digital solution. And it means that we have also like tech transfer. We're doing the tech transfer by simulation. We call it digital twin. We also do it that enterprise recipe management, how we can just transform the recipe from the drug discovery R&D to the production, and also we ought to have the comprehensive data exchange between IT and OT layer. And our goal is we bring more, or we're feeding our machine learning and AI system with the more label data to help that the biopharma manufacturer to learn from the other, also to learn from the process.
Mm-hmm. Great. No, thanks a lot to the panel. Gustavo, Katerina, Peter, and Ahmed and Martin. Thanks a lot for this discussion. And yes, let's hope we'll be able to get things moving on that side and looking forward to staying in the exchange and to see how things are progressing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.